Welcome, and thank you for joining today's Manufacturing in 2030 project session, focused on the coming data value revolution with reflections from our event this past December in Nashville. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. We have muted all of the participant lines in order to maintain sound quality throughout this session. However, we do encourage that you ask questions at any point by placing them in the questions box, which should be located likely on the right-hand side of your screen. We will do our best to address all of your questions either during the session or during the Q&A portion of the event. And lastly, this session is being recorded and will be sent via email within 24 hours of the session's conclusion, and will also be available on the Manufacturing Leadership Council website within approximately 5 to 7 business days. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Brossell, MLC's founder, vice president, and executive director. David, I turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Lauren, and welcome everyone to our Manufacturing in 2030 project call for today, coming out of our event in Nashville in December of last year. It's great to have you all, and I hope you get a lot of value out of today's call. So let me give you a little bit of background about the Manufacturing in 2030 project, if you're not familiar or if you need a refresher. In the spring of 2021, the Manufacturing Leadership Council, a division of the National Association of Manufacturers, launched its 2030 project. The project's main goal is to enable manufacturers to envision what manufacturing might look like by the year 2030. Realizing this goal entails thinking broadly about the context manufacturing will operate in the years ahead, including the population, demographic, and economic trends that will shape the industry. In addition, it entails understanding the direction and velocity of technological trends associated with Manufacturing 4.0, the industry's transition to the digital model of manufacturing. Perhaps most importantly, it entails identifying and understanding the challenges that all will face as the industry moves to the next stage of Manufacturing 4.0. Armed with these understandings, manufacturers such as yourselves could better plan their longer-term future and find ways to enhance their value, their competitiveness, and contribution to society. In this regard, I would encourage you to read an important white paper that has been published as part of the project. It is called The Next Phase of Digital Evolution. It is available on the MLC website. Now I'd like to thank our partners on the project, EY, Invisible AI, NTT Data, and West Monroe. Your support has made this project possible, and the intellectual contribution you have made to it has been very, very valuable to MLC and its members. So thank you very much. I'd like to introduce now our panelists. Eric Johnson, who is the Director of Product Experience and Engineering Lab at West Monroe. Bhaskar Radhakrishnan, who is the Senior Advisor of Manufacturing Industry Solutions at NTT Data. Hiral Rao, the Industry Cloud Leader at EY. And Skylar Woolley, the Marketing Director at Invisible AI. Thank you all for joining us today. We're looking forward to a robust and rigorous discussion. And of course, last but not least, our moderator and our Manufacturing in 2030 project content director, Steve Moskowitz from the MLC. So let's kick this off with getting reflections about Nashville from each of you. Just a couple of minutes on what your key takeaways, the most important things you took from the discussion in Nashville in December. Let's start with Bhaskar with some top-level takeaways. Bhaskar?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, good morning, and thanks for having me, and hello to my panelists as well. Thank you, Steve and David. So a couple of things. I think to start with, the agenda for the event itself is very well constructed. There's a lot of great content, a lot of great presenters, and the topics that were considered were also top of mind for for the industry itself, right? So if there is one thing that you really want to take away, at least that I took away from this, is data is everything for the transformation. Data, while data is an opportunity, but also it is looked at as a huge, significant challenge. It is fundamental for manufacturing transformation, and it is also a common theme across the manufacturing organization. So everything around data, how you monetize the data, how you derive some better insights, and how you drive actions is certainly an important topic of discussion. That was one of the things. And the second I would also like to emphasize is there is a prevailing, or rather increasing focus on the data ecosystem. That is actually adding more, while it opens up a lot of opportunities, but it is also adding a lot of complexity to the whole data ecosystem, right? So definitely the ecosystem is on the rise, and it is important for manufacturers to really think through how to benefit and sustain through the ecosystem, because to see how you can monetize the data. That's one. And the other thing I remember is for industry segments, closer to evolving a data ecosystem, it becomes important to have a right strategy in place towards the participation and as well as a contribution to these ecosystems. It's another area, and like I said again, data is not a magic bullet, right? Like any resource in the organization, it needs to have the right foundation and groomed well to provide to get the intended results, right? So to put things in perspective, data mastery is not a static end goal, it's an infinite game, right? So there is no one and done, and there will always be evolving rules and players and challenges. So it is extremely critical for the manufacturers should be ready to face this, and would require a very strong foundation and agile data foundation vision, culture, with the change mindset with the leadership. So that's the notes, and that's the perspective that I've got from the event.
That's a great way to start it off, Bhaskar. Thanks very much. Skylar, Willie, let's go to you and get your key takeaways from Nashville.
Thank you so much, David. It is a pleasure to be here. And Bhaskar made a lot of great points. Overall, the event was just really thrilling to be at in person. Met a lot of great folks there, and the agenda was really well put together. I'd say first and foremost, Bob Parker's keynote made a lot of really interesting points about the amount of data that's generating every single year. It's growing exponentially. I think he mentioned 106 exabytes in 2022. Just so much data is already being generated. I think manufacturers are inundated with digital signals. So it's really important to take a strategic approach to how we're taking a look at data, what we're doing with it, and what insights are being derived from that data. He also mentioned that implementing change is both a political campaign, a marketing campaign, and a change management campaign internally. It really needs to be a full company approach when you are implementing new technology, implementing data strategies overall. One other talk that really stood out to me was Peter Aiken's Defining Data-Driven Leadership talk, and he made a few really interesting points. One of which was that most data challenges are people and process based, but future employees are underprepared for data-driven workplaces. There are often manufacturers that don't have a data approach where they're training all of their employees on how they should be interpreting data or using the data that they have available. And regardless, whether digitizing or monetizing, garbage in, garbage out is constant. So taking a look at the quality of the data that you are working with is paramount. So thank you so much. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, great points. I mean, generating data is one thing. Organizing well around the opportunity with data is entirely another. So Eric Johnson, let's go to you for your key takeaways.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. And thanks again for having me here. Excited for the conversation with the fellow panelists and Steve. Looking forward to it. Great points from Skylar and Bhaskar already. I echo a lot of that concern around the preparedness of employees for the data of the future, not just how to glean the right insights from it. I think that was a really good talk, but the what to do with them afterwards. Like, what's the action plan coming out of that? What outcomes do we want to drive? One of the things that I found inspirational about just the talks in general is that they're happening. It's critical, as somebody who works across multiple different areas of multiple different industries. Every industry needs to have these conversations around the impact of emerging technologies, the impact of data and data hygiene, and how it builds that stable platform for future growth. And I think more critically, and this is what's exciting about this conversation and more to come in the future as well, is that we continue having these conversations as a group in our individual companies into the future, that it doesn't happen only at the event, that the event serves as a catalyst for us to have these conversations in a durable, repeatable pattern in our own organizations and as a community, more effectively into the future. So never stop talking about this stuff. It's super critical, and we can better serve our employees, our peers, and our customers if we have the right conversations now and plan for the future. So that's my kind of overall takeaway, and I'm really excited to get into the conversation.
Yeah, great point, Eric. We're writing the playbook as we go along, aren't we? Hiral, love to hear your key takeaways from the conference.
Listen, after Skylar's summary and Bhaskar and Eric's awesome points around summarizing the event so well, I can only say, data is my passion. I've spent over 2 decades working with data and working with our manufacturers. And, it's both exciting and unnerving all at the same time when we talk exabytes of data. David, as you said, 18 zeros, right? That's a lot of zeros. And as I'm listening to this conversation, think about what we're doing. We are actually taking data from our Nashville conference, and we're turning that into reflections and insights so that it can generate value, right? So I think data, as Bhaskar said, is so integral to every single conversation, every single business that we're all part of and that we live. And yet, it's very interesting that the organizations and the manufacturers that we work with are at different points in their journey when it comes to data, right? So we're collecting all this data, but Eric, as you rightfully said, what are we doing with it? How are we truly unleashing the potential and the value of this data set? There's 2 global manufacturers that I'm working with right now, and we go into the plans, we're talking about data and AI, and which is wonderful. But here they are struggling with connectivity at the shop floor level. Do their assets have the right PLCs and sensors and tags to get the data in the first place, right? To contribute to the exabytes of data that we're talking about. So I think, how do we really talk about data and this journey that we are taking together, but making sure that we're still able to unleash the potential of data as we hit these different milestones. So looking forward, thank you for including me on the panel, and super excited about the conversation this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. And certainly last but not least, our moderator and our architect for the conference, Steve Moskowitz. I'd love to hear your key takeaways, Steve, from your perspective, and then we'll turn it over to you for the panel discussion.
Sounds great. And again, thanks for all the good feedback so far from the panelists. I think 2 things that I took away that I don't want to reiterate what everybody said, but I think one of the things that I took away is a challenge. We talked about 2030, which is what's coming in the future. As you saw in a lot of the conversation and the talk about AI, we struggle with, we're doing things today, right? We're tackling today's problem. And how do you balance the ability to think about the future and plan for the future while tackling today's problems? One of the things we saw is some things that we thought were 5, 6, 7 years out are suddenly with us today, right? So the future keeps changing, the present keeps changing. So that balance of future thinking and future planning with today's execution, I think, is an ongoing challenge, and one of the things we'll have to think about. The other one that I took away that came up, and you'll see in the conversations today, we're going to follow the flow of the conference where we kind of had the different sections. But one of the constant threads that we heard about was mindset and culture, which came from leadership. And that was one of the things I took away was we spent a lot of time talking about workforce and the people on the factory floor and the analytics teams and what they have to do. What we learned a lot during the conference was, what about our leaders? What do we need from leaders in the future? And you'll see that in today's conversation as well. So those are some of the things I took away, were that balance again of today versus the future. And then obviously leadership as a critical element, not just data as a critical element for the future.
Yeah, all
All right,
great
well,
comments.
with that,
Yeah, thank you,
I
Steve.
hand it back to you, David. Any
Yeah,
final comments from you?
I think they're all great comments. I would just, from my perspective, if you don't mind, I'd add my own takeaway, which I had many of. But one of the things we focused on for a long time at MLC is how the technology affects decision-making processes in companies. And this is a big question around data, because it gets to culture, it gets to the power structure within companies. And the more data and the more insights from data that are available, the more it's going to change, or could change, hopefully in a positive way, how decisions are made and how the power structure operates. And this is why we get in our surveys, in our new smart factory survey, for example, the number one inhibitor to smart factories is cultural resistance. So data has a lot of tentacles and it affects many things. So I'll be very interested to hear what the panel has to say about all this as we go along. So Steve, take it away. I will drop off now.
Sounds great. Thank you, David. So let's get into the meat of the conversation today. As I said, what we're trying to do was we took the 3 sessions of the day, the data value, people and process and technology, and really want to reflect on each of those. And so what we did was we went back through the conversations, went back through the feedback, through the Slido and the reflections during the conference. And that's what's going to gear us towards the conversation that we want to have now. So on the data value side, we talked a lot about different ways to think about data, from ecosystems to supply chain. As we talked through the summary of the day, collaboration was a key element. So one of the things that we want to ask our panelists about is, as we move towards rethinking data-driven decision-making and, more importantly, data-driven collaboration in the future, where are the opportunities for companies as you reflect on it? Where do companies need to focus and why? And what do they need to do now to prepare for this shift to a better data-driven collaboration of the future? With that, we'll start with Bhaskar.
Well, opportunities and use cases are, plenty in across the enterprise, right, if you will. So when it comes to the focus, again, it also depends, but if you look at it, focus could be on revenue growth, or creating new revenue models, or improving the operational excellence or the delivery excellence, or ability to new products quicker, and focus on sustainability aspects. So there could be many focus areas that an organization could look at. Again, it depends on the nature of business and the maturity in one area versus another, right? So to put it in perspective, the opportunity is plenty. In some cases, factories are the big focus. In some cases, supply chain is a big focus. Now, coming to preparation itself, I should say this, right? A lot of organizations, what we see is they are very much focused on a short-term magic bullet approach, too much micro-focused on return on investment without the macro vision and objective. That would actually kill the progress, right? So that's a very important point. I really urge the organizations to look at the macro picture of it, rather than just the short-term micro ROI based discussions. Now, coming to the approach itself, I think we need a much broader enterprise-wide data strategy with a focus on creating a data foundation and the data fabric for the entire enterprise, rather than just focusing on the small use cases centric business objectives. So this is probably one of the reasons why today we see that a lot of manufacturing companies are not able to scale beyond the pilot, because they are very much use case centric. You need a perspective much beyond and broader, just specific to a factory or a specific to an asset or a specific to a line, right? So in essentially what I'm trying to say is, think about the data foundation, right? Data foundation is going to be the building block for everything you do in order to become the data-driven digital enterprise. So you need a much broader data strategy, and you don't have to look at it from a use cases perspective. So to conclude this, I would say that data is a resource in the organization. And most importantly, when you are talking about the factory transformation, the data does not exist in a simple form of, in a SQL table, right? It's not in a structured format where you just go query the data and be able to do some reporting, right? That's not what we are looking at. The industry, what we are looking at is the factory. Factory has data coming from everywhere, looking from the sensors to machines to PLCs and control systems, from level 0 to level 5. There is a gamut of things involved, and the data is coming from all different sources. And guess what? The data is not always structured. The data is a streaming data, real-time data, semi-structured, unstructured. You need a much broader data strategy and a foundation. Then you start building, apply a context on top of that data foundation. Then you apply the use cases. Then it becomes more scalable across the enterprise. So that's how I'm looking at it, and this is how we also advise our customers as well.
Excellent, thank you. Skylar.
Bhaskar made a lot of amazing points. I wholeheartedly agree. I think the first step, if you've not really thought about an overall data strategy, is to implement one from, a holistic data strategy, not a, one-off solving this individual problem. So in order to not repeat everything Bhaskar said, I wholeheartedly agree with that point. And to build onto that, I think in order to build that data-centric collaborative world of tomorrow, another key piece is data democratization. So how do we empower employees of all levels to have access to the relevant data that they need? So when you're building that holistic data strategy, I would recommend thinking through who are the different people across my business who may need access to data? What data do they need access to, and in what form? Not everyone needs to be querying a SQL database, right? But how do they need to receive that data? So thinking about, implementing those democratization strategies. So that could look like self-service analytics tools, but it could look like some visualizations that are available on the factory floor at all times, and incorporating that into the training and upskilling and reskilling of the entire employee base. So that's, the big point that I take away is that democratization piece. How do we make it so that everyone across the business can have access to the relevant data that they need?
Great. EJ, you want to add a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So great points, as you said, Skylar, that Bhaskar already made. And Skylar, I love the fact that you mentioned data democratization. That's a huge thing, I think, as we look at the coming future of not just AI, but also data availability in general. Bhaskar, you said something about, don't start with the use cases. I absolutely resonate with that. That's something that is near and dear to my heart as a product person. We try and start with what is the company strategy? What are the objectives? What are we trying to do for our shareholders, for our customers, for our employees? What are we trying to do to build a better, more holistic organization? And let's make sure our initiatives are aligned to that. So when we talk about data as the foundation, what is that data doing to push forward our objectives, to achieve our company strategy? And how do we, I think, again, not to kind of go over the excellent points that both of you already made, but from a data democratization standpoint, specifically, how do we put meaningful information in the hands of the users to build fluency now so they can unlock value later? I think it's really critical to start putting emerging technology in the hands of the employees that are going to need to be fluent in it in the years to come, and help them understand the art of the possible, help them understand what they can do with it, and then start building more specific solutions around it. So use that comprehensive data strategy that was already mentioned, use that alignment to company goals, and focus on personas. What are their jobs to be done? What are their pain points and gain opportunities? That's something that if you hang around me long enough, you'll hear me say all the time, so that we're actually enabling our employees to drive value, and they feel that in their day-to-day work. And then leadership feels that outcome that they're trying to achieve in a measurable way, and we're able to move forward effectively as a company. So excellent points. I also like the fact, Bhaskar, that you made around it's not just always a SQL database out there. You know, the world of edge computing is real. We have the Internet of Things is, you know, evolved several times over, and we have to be able to deal with both structured data from multiple systems in a multi-cloud environment and on-prem, and we have to be able to contemplate, you know, unstructured data sources from a variety of different machines. And what do we do with it? How do we turn it into something of value for, you know, both company strategy and then also our employees in their day-to-day? My 2 cents.
Great. So thank you. I think one of the things I took from what y'all provided, you know, and something that we talked about at the conference as well is when we talk about democratization, we talk about aligning to our business strategy, is making sure we're thinking beyond the 4 walls of our factories, right? Thinking to our suppliers, thinking to our customers, thinking to our partners, and how do you open up your data again beyond those 4 walls? And I think that's one of the challenges we have, is we tend to focus, as Bhaskar said, on our use cases, which are within our own factories, within our own businesses. As we look towards that future, is how do we open up to beyond kind of what we look at today, and making sure we can really share and collaborate in more effective ways. Anything else additional to add, anyone?
That's a great point you make, Steve. You know, I think the metaphor of data as a currency has been used for a long time now, but I think that we're in an era where that needs to shift a little bit, and it's not a currency to be hoarded and banked. It's a currency to be spent to help people level up their game as well, to help collaborate across organizations and institutions and with the general public. So I think there's really great investment that people can make with their data in the future, and it's an important aspect that we consider.
No, I think, listen, great points from my fellow panelists. By the way, I don't know if this is like, if I have to follow this flow, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. You guys are so amazing. The one thing, just to build on everything that you guys have said, is making sure we tie value that each level of the manufacturing organization needs to have coming out of that data, right? A shop floor person who has no time, you know, he or she has to take quick decisions. Otherwise, it's already too late, right, for that person to make real-time decisions and action upon it. Somebody who's a plant manager, and making sure that they have the right access to the right data set. And last but not the least, from a corporate perspective as well, you know, the decisions that need to be made. We have a term, we call it data-driven manufacturing. And it sounds so good, but it is so tough, right? Because it's not just data-driven manufacturing, but manufacturing at all levels within the organization where we can truly provide that value. So that's my 2 cents.
Excellent. So thanks all. Going to build off of what you just talked about, you know, Skylar mentioned, and then I think everybody built on, is this idea of democratization. So we talked about our workforce, and our second panel of the day, our second sessions of the day, were on people and process. And one of the things we talked about in those sessions was the focus on learning. The learning mindset actually came up in our initial conversations in the morning. We carried through this idea of learning mindset throughout the day. We talk a lot in the news, in government, in higher education, and industry about the growing gap in our manufacturing workforce. And so there's a lot of focus today in how we're training people, how we're getting people upskilled. We're also tackling, you know, reskilling our workforce, et cetera. So I want to shift a little bit, right? I don't want to rehash kind of what we already know was out there. As we think about this idea of the learning mindset came up. We talked about as AI is going to be more and more critical, we're losing things like critical thinking and how do you ask questions effectively. And so the question I have for you is, as you went through the sessions at Nashville, And as we think ahead, how do we need to rethink our companies? How do we need to rethink learning and development within our companies? If we keep doing the things that we've always done, we know we spend, for every 100 hours of training, probably 80 of them are mandated by regulatory and legal and HR and IT and compliance. There's things you have to go do. And the rest is, well, go do your job and learn about your job. How do we change the thought process? How do we approach things differently to really develop that next generation of thinking in our workforce to make sure we're not just training for today, but for the future? So it's a broad way of kind of asking you to think about our learning and development organizations and what is their role. So Skylar, let's start with you on that one.
Thank you. Great question. And I think that, there's a lot of different ways you can go with our answers here and a lot of avenues I feel like that we could go down. But I'd say first and foremost, I think that companies need to meet their employees where they are and take them further. What I mean by that is they should be doing, continuous kind of skills assessments across the employee base. Where are we strong? What areas are we weak? And then start building holistic strategies to approach from there. I think we all know that people learn in different ways, right? And in different formats. So adopting flexible learning models, I think, will be really crucial. And experimenting with different formats of learning. So I would say a lot of the companies that work with us, that work with Invisible AI, we provide video data on the operations and manual assembly that's happening on the factory floor. And then companies use those videos of bad cycles, of good cycles, to then train their operators to either teach them a new skill or show them how to upskill. So that flexible learning model, the integration with daily work, it needs to be happening on a recurring basis, not just one-off or at the beginning of the quarter or whenever it's been mandated, will be huge. And then I think, in order to build this kind of learning and data-driven culture, there needs to be recognition and incentives. It needs to be incorporated throughout the entire culture. So the last piece I'd say is leadership support, modeling from the top down, but also just throughout leadership across the organization, really.
That's excellent points. EJ.
Yeah, well said, Skylar. I really like that note around, certainly recognizing the different formats of learning and, meeting employees where they are and taking them further. I think that's incredibly salient. I think maybe to zoom out for a quick second, there's a lot of hype in the space around, how AI is going to replace jobs or how it, is going to, replace maybe some of the early tasks that younger employees in their career cut their teeth on to learn a trade or a skill. And I think while that is a possibility, really there's an opportunity from AI to build the capability to provide more adaptive learning, to provide people the right content right when they need that. It's tough when you get into, we recently did an engagement at West Monroe with a consumer industrial products company where we were looking at how to quickly turn over a line, retool it to produce a different set of SKUs. And historically, that might mean I got to page flip through a whole bunch of manuals, or I have to try and find a whole bunch of disparate documentation. And really that's sort of like oral tradition where the senior person tells the junior person how to go find it on the shared drive, and it's a mess. And what you can do with solutions, with both structured and unstructured data, or using more modern AI interactions, is build a natural language way for that person to ask questions and say, I need to change over the SKU. Where do I need to make changes? Why do I need to make changes? What's the impact if I don't? Have there been any changes to our SOP or to the line in general since the last time we did this? And that can help people kind of focus where they need to upskill or where they need to learn or where they need to manage their line employees. I think that's really critical. So if we take that sort of idea of turning that strong foundation of data that we talked about previously and enabling it with more humanized ways to interact with it, we provide people the opportunity to learn and grow effectively just in time, just in the moment they need it, and retain that information more effectively as they utilize it on the job. I would love to underscore something I said in the previous question, and that's, put modern tools in the hands of employees. A lot of times companies will roll out a new tool set and say, good news, we sunset the old one, it was bad, here's the new one, it's good, learn it quick, get on board. And I think if we do more of like a drip campaign of, we're going to put new emerging tools in your hands, we're going to provide you the opportunity to engage with them, and then we're going to ask you for feedback on how it's either enabling your job or causing some challenges so that we can innovate and learn along the way. We'll be in a situation where we kind of bet the garden and not the farm as we roll out new tools and technologies for our employees to engage with. So that's the way that I would think about it. And then everything that Skylar said, plus one, and then how do we look at like ethical considerations for enabling content education for our employees over time. So
excellent points from both of you. I think one of the things I took from what you both described is the idea of, as we think about our digital transformations, we often companies are tying it to our lean manufacturing and our continuous improvement, and the idea of running experiments not only in our factories but with our people. Right, we tend not to do that, right? So we know how to say, well, I'm going to go evaluate a new tool on the factory floor, a new process, a new AI engine, see if it works. We don't do the same with our people and how we train them. So rethinking that and the idea of experimentation, adaptive learning, and feedback is going to be vital, right? Are we actually engaging our people to get feedback on what's working and not working for them?
I love that.
Haral or Bhaskar, anything?
Just real quick, I love that whole thing about experimentation. I'd love to share something that we've seen as we engage with employees in a number of different sectors. Sometimes they don't like to be experimented on, and that can be the perception, even though that's kind of the heart of innovation is experimentation. So I think what we've tried to do is start introducing language where we enroll them in a hypothesis, like help us test this hypothesis, and then we'll do it through an experiment. And it's been, we've seen a lot of really great traction because that enrolls and engages that creative thinking center and, oh, I'm part of the solution opportunity here, not just I'm a cog that's trying to be optimized, has been really helpful.
Excellent point, excellent point. Haral or Bhaskar, anything addition?
No, I think Skylar and Eric did such an awesome job. I think I'm sure topics will come up again for later questions, so I'll reserve for that.
Sounds great. All right, so let's dive into the next section of the day, which is around technology, and really what are again the implications of the future. So we talked a lot about technology, AI for people and data visualizations and the future of the metaverse. A lot of excitement. Those are three areas where again we had that balance of what's happening today with what that future might be. A key message that came across was we need to start now. Right? You can't keep thinking about the future technology. Start doing things today. So the first question, really two questions here, is as we think about the technologies, where do we start? We talked earlier about the data foundation, right? Where else do we need to look to build that foundation to be ready for future technologies, even if we don't know what they are? And as we're doing that work, how do we learn by doing, right? We talked about use cases and strategies. So how do you balance this experimentation with the idea of, well, we don't always want to go to deep use cases. And then finally, where do you think the future is, right? Are we really 15 to 20 years away from a truly integrated future? Or is that something that we're going to see come much faster? So let's start with you, Haral. And again, you can tackle those in any way you want, but I'll leave it to you to start.
No, absolutely. And this is a great question because as we think about what do we do now, but at the same time, making sure that we have that vision, the strategy that Bhaskar, you and Eric and Skylar and everybody talked about, how do we bring that together? And, having a dualistic approach, I think is essential because you need to tackle what's in front of you now as manufacturers, as suppliers, as vendors, but at the same time have that strategic vision of how do you map your journey when you look out 2030, 6 years away or more, right? It oftentimes brings a smile to my face when we say, manufacturing 2030, and it sounds so far away. It's only 6 years away. I have no idea when my, daughter became 16 years old and time's flown by. So, I think making sure that we use our timeline efficiently and map out our milestones as manufacturers is so essential. I think how do we learn? This is going to sound almost contradictory to what we've been talking about, but fail fast. It's okay. It's okay to fail. There is so much technology out there. We're talking about ecosystem. We talk about solutions. We talk about so much that we're all trying to learn and adapt and figure out where that fits in our organization. It's okay to fail, but it's better to fail fast and say, you know what, this is not for me. And it's okay to say it's not for me. Just because something is the shiny object that everyone's doing, it's not necessary that you have to do that. I think it is necessary that you plot that shiny object on your path forward, whatever is right for you. But as manufacturers, we just need to be aware of what our journey looks like. Last but not the least, Steve, you talked about something extremely dear to my heart, which is just foundational elements like continuous improvement and lean. There is an organization that I'm working with, and 3-year journey, I kid you not, around Industry 4.0 and data and technology and everything. But they had to call a timeout because you know what they were missing? They were missing that foundation. So making sure that we as manufacturers, as we take on this journey around data and technology, we still keep our foundation core to our hearts, which includes lean, which includes continuous improvement, which includes architecture. How do my systems and solutions and everything work together and gel together to give me the maximum value? I think that's probably one of lessons learned for us that we need to continue to implement as we think out into the future.
Great, excellent, thank you. Actually, we'll go over to EJ next. Skip the order here a little.
Yeah, sounds good. Incredibly well said. I love the fail fast. That's near and dear to my heart as a product person. And as we think about sort of that foundational components, just a wonder that I have is how do we get a more integrated approach to mapping that future, both with the incremental optimization that we have right now and the big bets for the future, and bring our technology people to our manufacturing floors and integrate them in the day-to-day. I'm a huge believer in observability. I'm a huge believer in collaboration. Work that we've done in a number of different sectors, the more we bring the people who are building these solutions to the day-to-day lives of the people who are using them, the better those solutions are going to be and the more involved and engaged everybody's going to be in solving problems. And I think that helps with your let's fail fast. Let's quickly get the right tools and technologies and solutions in the hands of the user so they can use them effectively in their day-to-day. That dualistic approach is super important as well. I was going to mention something about, if you haven't read it, there's this whole thing about the 3-box solution by Vijay Govindarajan. It's a great book, but it talks about that. What are you doing in your day-to-day kind of incremental optimization or innovation, and then what are you doing to place those bigger bets? But you need a culture shift in order to place those bigger bets. You need a culture shift to fail fast. You need it to be safe for people to feel like they can do that work effectively. So double underscore, and then maybe just a note about bringing those integrated teams together.
Excellent. Bhaskar.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of great points already highlighted by my fellow panelists. But a couple of things I would say is, again, emphasize again on learning by doing. That's always a great thing to do, right? Instead of how much were you here, I think you get your hands dirty, get to it, as long as you have the right strategy and right vision. So we say this all the time, right? Think big, start small, scale fast, right? Start with something, then, if you really see the value, just, go ahead. But think about it. There is never going to be a green field in this one, right? It's always going to be a messy brown field. So you just have to get started with the foundation. Probably I would start with, again, going back to our point on data architecture and data fabric. and assess if they're all good enough, right? Not just for your current needs, but also for the future. So as it is all related to a truly an integrated future, it will never be static, right? It will always be a moving goalpost. So as I said before, data mastery and the differentiation is, and that's where the opportunities are. So agreed, everything said by my fellow panelists. I think learning by doing is always great.
Great, excellent. And Skylar, we'll finish up with you. Any comments?
Sure, I'll keep it quick. Everyone made some excellent points. So just to add on a little bit, I'd say obviously first and foremost is setting that foundation, right? How is the data infrastructure? What are our governance policies? Making sure you have that in place before you just start throwing technology on top of it. But I'd say coming in with specific ideas of how you'd like to apply that technology is crucial. We have a lot of people that come to us and say, we want to do AI. And that's great. I love the spirit. Yes, but for what? AI is a tool to help improve different processes across your plant. So are you trying to, proactively monitor ergonomics? Are you hoping to improve your root cause analysis and streamline that, measure adherence to standardized work? Come in with something specific and make sure you're selecting vendors that are able to scale and grow with you. And then the last piece I'd say is set yourself up for success by really investing in change management. I think we all have been a part of rollouts of new technology at some point or another where change management was not thought about and it's failed simply because there's not an internal champion, there isn't enough training, or enough time hasn't been made for the teams to adopt the new technology. So no matter how exciting the application of this tech is or how cutting edge this tech is, it's going to fail unless you are thoughtful about how you roll it out across your business. So I really, really emphasize change management as a core piece to success.
Excellent. Thank you all for great feedback and insight. I think one of the things I took, and it's something that Haral said early and then was reiterated, is you have to figure out what technology matters to you. We often fall into the trap of, well, whoever the VP of something heard about this in the news or read it in the paper or was at a conference. Go do that, right? And figuring out what technologies actually matter for your business is going to be vital. As Skylar said, right? If safety is critical for you, we'll find technology around safety, and I think that's something we often struggle with is that piece. So excellent feedback. As a reminder to the folks on the audience, there is the question in the box there. So if you have any questions, please open them up. We'll have a few minutes at the end for questions. With that, I'm going to go to the last topic of the day, and something that came up as a common thread was this idea of leadership, and we talked about it earlier. And the leadership, Peter Aiken talked about the role of the CDO as a new role in the C-suite, and what does that current senior leadership look like? The question I'm going to ask is a little different, which is, as we think about our leaders of tomorrow, how do we prepare them for future leadership? What are the things we need to do differently to actually not just help our workforce, but help figure out who are the future leaders of tomorrow, right? Are there different skills that we need to be identifying now and say, you know what, that individual is going to be a future manufacturing leader, not because they're a great engineer, but because they're a great data thinker. So what is that going to look like as we prepare for the future and help our future leaders get ready? So Bhaskar, any comments on that?
Sure, I'll make it quick. I think the biggest expectation of the leadership would be to believe, drive a vision, right? Drive a vision, enable a change, and also create trust and ensure adoption of the digital enterprise that he's envisioning to build, right? So in a nutshell, leaders should continuously learn and also have a strong business and technology acumen, in addition to a strong organization and industry understanding, to your point. So many of the leaders today rely on knowledge from consortiums like this, and then bring the ideas back to their organization. So we need to continue to educate the leaders as an industry consortium. We also have the responsibility to groom the next level leaders, is the way that I'm looking at it. So at the same time, the leaders should also be capable of creating an inspiring team, because the team is the one who is going to make this a reality. And finally, leaders should lead by example. That's very important, right? They should operate and bring in data-driven operation culture across the organization.
Excellent. Haral, any comments?
Great points, Bhaskar. One of I have a nephew, he's 2, and he's already changing settings on my phone and running YouTube videos. And, we are working with a generation that are already digital savvy. They already have a digital mindset. It's up to us now. How do we take that generation and truly give them the right exposure at the intersection of digital and manufacturing? I think it's so crucial for our manufacturing folks to understand digital and vice versa. I think technology is becoming so much easier. How many no-code, low-code solutions are out there, and how much co-pilot help that you can get just by saying, write my resume, and it'll do it for me, right? So I think there's so much available to us. I think now it's up to us as manufacturers to take all of that and bundle it in the right way. Skylar, you made a great point around really figuring out what that training map looks like, what is right for those employees that we work with our coworkers. So being able to not just create a digital mindset, but enable everybody in our organization with that right digital mindset. Last but not the least, change is difficult. Let's admit it, you guys. We as manufacturers, we can go talk about change all day, but darn, it's difficult. So I think making sure that we acknowledge that and say, all right, this is difficult. Let's all agree. But now, how do we still make that step change, right, towards having that data-driven manufacturing or digital mindset? I think is going to set us off in the right path.
Excellent. Yeah, I think one thing that both you and Bhaskar talked about was this idea of intersectional opportunities and making sure our future leaders are not just being given opportunities to learn about technology, but they're being put in positions to learn about the business and learn about supply chain and really giving them opportunities to learn the entire business, because we know that digital is no longer just a manufacturing opportunity, it's a business opportunity. All right, so we have about just about 7 minutes left here. So I'll ask you each kind of some final reflections with the final question, which is, what's your most important piece of advice for manufacturing companies, again, to do now as they prepare for this data-centric, AI-driven future? So with that, Bhaskar, final comments.
2 comments, very quick. First of all, start if you have not done so. Don't hesitate to go back and relook at your data foundation. So AI is going to be the future. In order to go, you need a data foundation.
Great. Skylar.
Great point. I was going to say, data and AI aren't just dominating the future, they're dominating now. So start acting. There's never going to be a perfect moment for you to begin, so just begin. And I think we've iterated this over and over again, but look at your infrastructure, look at the quality of the data. That Peter Aiken's point about garbage in equals garbage out, no matter how much digitization and modernization you bring in, really look at the quality of the data that you've got.
Thank you. EJ.
+1, and then I would also add, there's 2 ways to think about AI in the future. I think certainly as the tool that can solve the right problem that you bring to the table to try and solve. And then I also think that there's this other opportunity for it as a co-pilot. I know that's an overused term in the industry, but a partner or creative tool that can unlock more productivity and better experiences in day-to-day jobs. So I would look at it from both perspectives. How can we solve specific problems that help us optimize or scale? And then how can we really empower our employees to do really cool work at the same time?
Excellent. Haral. Oh, what can I say? +2. That was excellent, you guys. I think we as manufacturers, a lot of times when I talk to our leaders, we say, you know what, I am different. I know all the companies do it this way, but I am different. Can I just say we are more alike than different? And I think reflections like these, conferences like the ones that MLC has, are a great way for us to learn from our peers because we are more alike than different. And I think making sure that as we all get onto this data journey, we are comparing notes, we're sharing notes, we're learning from each other's fail-fast failures, and making sure that technology is not an option. It is here, and it is here to stay. Now it's only up to us to figure out how do we adopt it and do the best that we can to get all of the value out of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. I think we have time for one question from the audience I have here. And it's similar to what Hiral just mentioned. So, you know, how will manufacturing companies differ in realizing value? So as you look at CPG versus pharma versus equipment manufacturers, and more importantly, as you think of large manufacturing versus small and medium manufacturing, you know, what can small and medium manufacturers do to think about the future that may be different than what a large manufacturer can do? So I'll kind of open that up for anybody to give some thoughts on that challenge of the small, medium businesses.
Yeah,
I'm happy
I can start.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
go.
sorry.
Please go, because I was going to reference you, Hiral. Please go.
Oh, Eric, I'll reference you right back. I think, Liz, I have the pleasure of working across industries, both consumer products, life sciences, and discrete. And one of the things, Steve, that I would say is with technology, actually, it is making it easier for the different sizes of manufacturers to still be able to adopt at their needs level. If I'm a small plant, there's so many consumption-based models that are coming out, right, that are being introduced. There are SaaS options now available, right, subscription as a service. I would urge our manufacturers to look into not just technology, but the different models and options that are available out there, because I think, number one, they're applicable across industry. And then number two, I think it's so much easier now to find the right size that fits you rather than in the past, which was the one size that you had to make to fit all. So that's just something, tips and tricks that I would leave you all with.
Excellent point. Excellent point. EJ, anything else to add to that?
The only addition, I think incredibly well said. I'd love to call back to your point around we're more alike than we are different. A lot of the problems that people are trying to solve have the same sort of data requirements, you know, on the bottom. And to Hiral's point, there are many tools and solutions out there that can help you tailor it to, you know, your fit. The best advice I would have is go to the platforms, the services, the tools that you have right now and see what they're doing from an AI exploration standpoint, and then figure out what you need to do from a problems to solve standpoint, and if they can meet your needs or if you need to work with an AI company to build something a little bit more bespoke. But there's so many tools and solutions out there that it's worth exploring the space quickly, failing fast, to your point, Hiral, and building that common data platform to enable those solutions.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. We have about a little more, just about a minute left. Lauren, if you could put the slides back up. So just some final quick reminders for everybody. Again, thank you to our panelists, Bhaskar, EJ, Hiral, and Skylar. Excellent feedback. Quick reminders, save the date. We have our next Manufacturing 2030 project in December. Not too late to get that on your calendars. Think about what's coming. We'll also have some more Manufacturing 2030 activities throughout this year, so be aware of that. Next slide. Rethink is coming up on the next slide, maybe. Well, we'll see in a second. Rethink is our 20th anniversary of the Rethink event in June. It's earlier in June this year than it's been before. So again, look at that date. Make sure you can hit the date. Make sure you register. It's our 20th anniversary. It's our 20th anniversary of the Leadership Awards as well. Fantastic event, fantastic time. Please join us, and it's going to be wonderful. And finally, thanks again for joining us. If you have additional questions, please contact our speakers. Reach out to MLC Info. As Lauren said at the beginning, this is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience. It's exciting. It's going to be a great future, and we look forward to being in this future with you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Steve. You were awesome.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Take care. Bye-bye.